Hello everyone, this is Mrs. G. I wanted to talk about the distributive property and then linear equations with distribution. I believe there's multiple levels for each of these, so let's jump on into the notes. Make sure you print out the first 6 pages so that you can follow along with me and take notes. Anything that you can write is always put into long-term memory more than just watching. All right, let's start on page 1. All right, so let's take a look at the distributive property. These are the Delta math problems that we will be doing. There's different levels of each of those topics. So let's review distributive property in general. Essentially what you're going to do is take this value that lives outside the parenthesis information and you're going to distribute everything that's within that parentheses. So 5 is going to be multiplied by x and 5 is going to be multiplying the 4. So it looks essentially like this. 5 times x plus 5 times 4, which when you distribute that, it is a 5x plus 20, and that is your answer of distributing that using distributive property. Now this was a whole number that lived outside those parentheses, and in this one, this is a 2x multiplying to a negative 3x, and then 2x multiplying also to a 2. So let's take a look at distributing that. So we have 2x times a negative 3x plus 2x times 2. And this becomes 2 times a negative 3 is a negative 6. X times x is x squared plus 2x times 2 becomes 4x. So that's distributing the information. There's going to be many problems in this module where you're going to be doing distribution. So make sure you know this technique very well. Let's review when we're multiplying x's together on how that really works. So when we're multiplying an x times x, which is what this was, you're really saying it's x to the first power, x1 times x1. So it's an additive operation in order to do those exponents. So it becomes x1 plus 1 is equal to x squared. Let's take a look at this one where we have x cubed, and that's a times x squared. Remember, it's like an additive process. Well, it is. So it's x times 3 plus 2. I'm adding those exponents up to get x to the 5th power. So when you multiply x cubed by x squared, the answer is x to the 5th. X squared times x squared, you can see we're getting used to the fact that you add those exponents together, and that answer is x to the 4th. So that's a review of how to multiply x's with each other, or you could even substitute a b or a d in those. It doesn't always have to be an x. All right, so we have 6x squared times 3x fourth, and we're trying to distribute that in here. So we're going to take 6 times 3 is 18, and x squared times x fourth, remember it's the same, x squared plus x fourth looks like this, so it's 18x to the 6th. So add up the exponents to get it when you're multiplying it together. Let's take a look at these sample problems down here where we're distributing it. So some of these problems will ask you to simplify, and all they're asking you to do in Delta is to do the distributive property to simplify that expression. It's not asking you to solve it, they're just asking you to simplify. So I'm going to take 8x times a negative 4 minus, take the 8x again, times 5x. When I do that, it'll become negative 32x minus 40x squared, right? I have x times x, so that becomes x squared. And that is simplifying that expression. Remember, it's an algebraic expression when it doesn't have the equal signs, and it's an algebraic equation when it has the equal signs. All right, let's take a look at this one, right? I'm going to distribute that 6 to each of those. So 6 times a negative 3 is a negative 18, and I keep the x squared because there's no x here to change that or alter it. 6 times 2 is 12. So that is my answer to simplifying that. All right, let's have you stop the video and you try these last 2 problems and we'll see if we agree. All right, so sometimes when we're doing distribution, we do draw arrows to what we're doing. just so our eyes follow what we're expected to do. It just helps with that. If you're someone that needs to write down each of these steps of what's happening when you distribute it, then that's fine. You can do that. I'm just showing you the work. I can just take this and multiply it out and write my answer, but I want to make sure that I express how everything is being done. So x times a negative 9x squared. Remember, this is really x to the 1. So we are adding that to get x cubed. Negative x times 5x squared is a negative 5x squared. Plus x times 9. We always write the number first. We don't write x9. We always write 9x. So that is that simplification. Ooh, there's some cool exponents going on in here. So let's see if we match. This time I'm just going to multiply it all the way through. I'm not going to show all these minor steps here. So 8 times 3, it's a negative 3. Ooh, those negatives. So this becomes a negative 24. X squared and x squared, I'm adding those up, becomes x to the 4th. Plus, I'm going to go follow that arrow. 8 times 10 is 80. X squared times x to the 1 is x cubed. Now, x squared, follow this arrow, to 10 is, well, let me do 8 times 10 is 80. And then x squared, there's nothing there to alter it, so it's going to look like this. And this would be your answer in Delta Math, and you're good. All right, let's go on to the second page where we're doing a level 2. We're actually going to solve equations using the distributive property. All right, as you can see, they differ from the other ones because I have an equal sign in here, so I'm expected to solve that variable. One of the things I'm going to do is make sure I distribute that to all of that and rewrite the equation. So 10 gets multiplied to everything in here, so this becomes 10b. 10 times a negative 9, don't forget, the negative 90 is equal to a negative 40. I'm trying to isolate the variable by itself, so I'm going to add 90 to both sides, so I get this down to 10b. Negative 40 plus 90 is a positive 50. Sometimes I like to add little positives to remind myself, but it's okay. I'm just going to leave it as 50. For me to get rid of this b, I'm going to divide this by 10 and this by 10. So the 10s cancel out, become b. And 50 over 10 is equal to 5. So b is equal to 5. One of the things that you could do in any of these, really, when you're doing this, is to put this value back in to see if it's true. So I'm going to do the 10, and then I'm going to put where b is, put the 5 where it lives, and write the equation, because that's what I'm saying b is equal to. It is equal to 5. You do your parentheses first, right? So 5 minus 9 is a negative 4. And so 10 times a negative 4 is a negative 40. And yes, it is true. So it's just one of the ways that you can check your work. Sub it back into the equation. All right, let's stop the video and you try to solve the rest of these, and let's see if we agree. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this. So 3 times 5c is 15c. 3 times 1 is 3 is equal to 33. Isolate that variable, so I'm going to minus 3 on both sides. So this becomes 33 minus 3 is 30. To get the c by himself, I'm going to divide it by 15. So it becomes c is equal to 30 over 15, which is equal to 2. So c is equal to 2. And we have showcased up here, if you wanted to check your answer, whether or not it was correct, you can do that. Now let's move down to this one here. Remember, we're going to distribute the information to each of those. So we have a tendency to draw those arrows so we can follow that information. 2 times 7y is 14y. 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2 is equal to 40. I'm going to add 2 to each side, so this becomes 14y is equal to 42. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 14 so that I get a y over here because the 14s will cancel out. And then I get 42 over 14. Well, maybe I don't see that 14 goes into 42 three times. I could put that into my calculator to see that. But I can see 2 goes into this, so I'm going to make this 21 over 7th. And I'm like, oh, 7 goes into 21 three times. So yeah, maybe I could have done it in one step, but it took me a couple steps to get to that final answer, but all is well. All right, let's go on to level 2, distribution level types problems on the next page. All right, there's just a lot of multiplying, adding, all that's going on here, so just be real careful and slow as you do it. Write your steps down. Don't try to consolidate too many all at once. This is where we make mistakes. As I've said before, I bold things because as I've even doing these video lectures for you, I've missed my bold signs. All right, so the first thing we want to do is make sure you distribute that information. So 3 times a negative 4 is a negative 12x. 3 times a negative 1 is a minus 3. And then I'm going to rewrite the rest of the problem so it looks like this. I'm going to combine like terms, so I'm going to combine all the x's together. So a negative 12x and a minus 2x is a negative 14x. Now, one of the things that a lot of people do is we become overconfident in our math skills, and we're like, oh, well, I can do this other one right here and pop on down there. This is where we make mistakes, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. So I would suggest, especially when it's on a test, to just combine one of them and rewrite it. And then let's do another combining. I'm going to combine these together. So negative 14x, and also bold those negatives. Negative 3 plus 4 is a plus 1 is equal to 43. And then I'm going to subtract 1 off of each side to get a negative 14x is equal to 42. All right, so then to isolate that x, remember variables have to be positive. So I'm going to have to divide both sides by a negative 14. And when I do that, I'm going to write it up here. The 14s cancel out, as well as the negative divided by negative becomes positive. So now I have a positive x, and I have 42 over a negative 14. I can reduce this by 2 to get negative 21 over 7. And here I go again. I did multiple ones to eventually come down to the fact that its answer was a negative 3. It's okay if it takes a multiple times to get to your final answer. Everything's all well. All right, you try to do this next problem, multiply it throughout, combine the terms together, and get your x value. Try to do this last problem. Stop the video. Work on paper when you do this. Just don't do it in your head. All right, so I'm going to multiply this 2 times a negative 4, negative 8x. 2 times 2 is just a 4. And then I'm rewriting the rest of the problem down. I'm going to combine terms together. Now I could combine the 4 and the 2 together. I could combine the variables. I just like to pick one. I don't know why. You just become a habit into doing what you do, but do it all the same way all the time. So I like to combine variables first, and on this side it becomes a negative 3x. And then I'm going to write the rest of the information down here, noticing I'm bolding. And then I'm going to combine these terms together, so it becomes a negative 3x plus 2 is equal to a negative 19. To isolate the x, I'm going to minus 2 off of each side, so this gets to a 0. So this becomes a negative 3x is equal to a negative 21. All right, so now I'm going to divide each side by negative 3 because I need to get that as a positive variable. And a negative 3 divided by negative 3 will be a positive x. A negative 21 divided by a negative 3 is going to be a positive 7. And that's the answer for that one. All right, let's come on down here and let's do the distribution first. So negative 2 times a negative 3. This is where we might make little math errors. A negative times a negative will give us a positive value. So it's going to be a positive 6x. And then a negative 2 times a negative 1 is going to give us also another positive 2. And then rewrite the rest of these problems from the equation. All right, I'm going to combine like terms. As I said, I like to combine my variables first. So a 6x minus 4x gives me a 2x. And I'm going to rewrite the rest of the problems so I can slowly get the answers. There's a lot of math steps in here, but they're not hard math steps, but they're easy to make small errors. All right, so this becomes 2x plus 5 is equal to 25 because I combined those terms. Getting this by itself, I'm going to take a minus 5 on both sides so I can get this down to 0, right? Plus 5 minus 5 is 0. So this becomes 2x is equal to 25 minus 5 is 20. Divide both sides by 2 and I get x is equal to 20 over 2, which hopefully you see the value is 10. All right, so those are level 2 distribution problems. And on the next page, we have some of the level 1 problems because you need to do this flawlessly and making sure we understand when we have multiple x's in there how that works out. And then there are other ones that have the distribution and solving it. You know to solve it because there'll be an equal sign. And then the last page is doing the level 2s. As I said, you'll find the distribution property being done on linear equations with fractions. It is a good thing to get this skill level down well so that you can go further along with it. Thank you, everyone.